Hi, this is Vic Hyland. Today's video will be about how to practice scales ready for guitar exams. One of the interesting things that I've noticed with people learning at the early grades, when they do the first grade, maybe like the preliminary grade, the RGT exam syllabus only gives you like a 1-octave scale. And what's interesting about this is that it often takes people in the early stages quite a long time to learn those opening scales. And by the time they get to grade 1, they can learn the new scales very, very quickly. And the interesting thing is with that, it's almost like you're learning to learn. So the more that you learn on anything, but in this instance with the guitar, the quicker you can learn other information about the guitar. So the scales that appear in in the preliminary grade are obviously quite straightforward in that they're only like 1 octave. Now, when you get to the scales for grade 1, there are 2-octave patterns, and they obviously need to be broken down more. So the thing to do, the main thing to bear in mind with things like scales, is that you're going to be marked for clarity, you're going to be marked for accuracy, and you're also going to be marked for evenness. So what you need to do when you're playing is to make sure that even within the practicing of the scale, that you're trying to achieve those things as you break the scale down. So for instance, if we look at the E natural minor scale taken from the RGT grade 1, you've got a nice little pattern here which goes 0, 2, 3, and it repeats itself on the next string, and then 0, 2, 4. So probably it would be a good idea to just take the first set of notes that are create a pattern. And then you can choose that you could use these fingers or these fingers. It's up to you. I mean, there are different schools of thought on that. But let's say, for instance, we're going to start and use our first and second fingers. And that means that the next string, which goes 0, 2, 4, you might use those fingers for. Okay? So that gives us that little pattern. And then maybe put those two strings together because the patterns are similar, and then at the very end 0, 2, 0, 1, 3, 0. And then so what you're doing is you're matching the muscle memory, or so we could transition there, okay, and then put them together and then smooth out the gaps, so slow it down as you put them together. The other important thing is that scales need to be practiced coming backwards. That sort of sounds a bit obvious, but you'll be amazed that we just assume that because we can play them going up, we're going to be able to play them coming back, which is not true. If you think about the alphabet, you know, you may be able to say the alphabet very quickly one way, but coming and doing the alphabet backwards, unless you practice it, you're not going to be able to do it. And it's the same with scales. So then you're going to practice coming back down. Okay, and then you put that together like that, and then the next thing obviously is to play up and down. And the trick here, I think, is to make sure that you do things in blocks of 3. I don't know why that is, it just seems to work more efficiently, that if you practice something and do it 3 times, that really sort of confirms it to the unconscious. And the other technique that I use, which is really lifted from NLP, is to revise it in your mind when you do it. So you play it through physically once and then do it again in your memory, if you sort of mean, and you sort of listen to what it sounded like, what it felt like in your fingers. And then you can actually make corrections that way. However wacky that seems, it really does work. and you can sort of make things sound smoother in your mind before you play them. In fact, I will do this as a video at some point, where I actually get somebody to play something, and then we'll correct it by them sort of internalising it and playing it back later. That's always really quite interesting when you see it happen. Remember that a lot of stuff to do with the arts and anything physical, it's not a rational thing. None of this stuff is rational. It's all very, because it's to do with the unconscious part of the mind. It's very sort of dreamlike and imaginary. And the more you encompass that with your playing, even at a physical level, it makes your progress so much more powerful. And that's without actually talking about musicality, which is incredibly dreamlike, how it is that you can play something and phrase it in a particular way. You cannot rationalise that stuff, you cannot intellectualise that stuff. It really is beyond the scope of the intellect, and it really is about hearing it the way you want it and all the rest of it. So, use those techniques on learning scales. I've just applied it to one scale on grade 1, but if you take that, you can apply it to any type of scale that you're doing at any grade. Mind you, by the time you get to something like grade 8, you've probably got some strategies yourself that would work. But anyway, I found these are very successful, and they're particularly good when you're teaching people to use those things. All right, so I'll speak to you again on another video. See you then.